Hey everybody, world's biggest geek here. My name is Kevin, back another review here today. And I just finished the season premiere of Amazon original series known as Marvel Spider-Noir. And my goodness gracious, guys, it was outstanding. It was breathtaking. Nicolas Cage performed this role so well. He did an outstanding job. Legendary actor Brendan, who played Silvermane as one of the main villains of the series, he did an outstanding job in his role. I think everyone's performance in this show was insanely great. They really did a great job of honoring one of the most iconic Spider-Man noir stories of all time, bringing him from the Into the Spider-Verse, where Nicolas Cage voiced him, and then Nicolas Cage got to play him in a live action story, as was just truly a brilliant new way of just bringing in an awesome new take of the Spider-Man. Going back to the 30s was truly great. Great costumes, great scenery, great set. They did a great, outstanding, wonderful job of the show. Truly the best. I think it was just an amazing series. So let's get into it. So basically where the show kicks off is that Ben, was a hero for many years. He said with great power comes with great power comes no responsibility. So Ben was just this private detective. He was saving New York, but he lost his wife Ruby, who was killed in an incident, and he couldn't save her. So he hasn't been the Spider for 5 years. So, just knowing that, that he just gave up his life. He feels responsible for his wife, Ruby, that he lost. So now, he's just been doing his own thing until this guy comes up, is like, hey, he comes to Ben and Janet, his secretary, and he's like, look, my wife has been, with this person. I need you to figure out who she's been around and what he's been up to. So we meet Felicia Hardy, who is known as a nickname known as Cat. She was like this singer outside this club for Silvermane. And so she was, so she meets, so she goes up to this hotel. Ben, takes pictures, and all of a sudden, he sees, Ben opens the door, like creaks it, and he sees Felicia, being handled, and he like takes a picture, he webs, this person. So now you're like, okay, and then this person runs off, and Ben just takes away. But then, Ben meets Felicia, like, oh, I see, I got some photos of you. And he's like, oh, Flynn. He's like, oh, Flynn, nice to meet you. So now Felicia tells Flynn to go follow him. And, Ben is walking, he's doing his own thing, and he ends up in a construction site. So Flynn's like, hand over those negatives. It's like, I prefer not to, grabs and like, here's the thing. I'm not afraid of the edge if you're going to throw me. So now, like Flint, normally you think, oh, Flint's just a normal guy. And then, all of a sudden Ben just like beats him up and takes this piece of wood and whacks him. But then you start seeing some changes. Flynn, his face starts like creaking. It gets dusty. And he transformed, like, oh, now he's this big pile of sand, and he's like, boom, knocks Ben off the building. And Ben, for like years, who hasn't like webbed, he's falling off like this. All of a sudden, he thwips right back into action and knocks him, Ben down. He's like, stop, please. Like now, he's like, how did Ben get these powers? I mean, how did Flynn get these powers? So Ben's like on a private investigation. So like Felicia comes to his office, like, well, the man you attacked last night, he's gone missing. No one knows where Flynn is. So now Felicia, she's like, look, you're a private investigator. Investigate this case. So now, Ben, so now like he goes to Flynn's apartment, and he, finds this old photo. Now, there was another person, the first episode, named Jimmy Addison, and he was the made up character for the show. He was the pyrotechnician. So this other private investigator was also sent to go find him, and he shot him, and all of a sudden he's like, I warned you, and boom, blew up. And then Ben's like, hey, you want to grab a drink? He's like, yeah. So he goes talks to his other private investigator. He's like, yeah, I was hired by Winston. So now okay, Winston hires Ben and this private investigator to solve the same case. But then you realize that Silvermane's house was burnt down to the ground. And no one had no idea who it was, but Silvermane was alive. So now, Ben is on this. So now you meet this mobster known as Winston. And he pulls a gun on Ben like, hey, where's my money? Like, hey, I have to ask you something, and then Janet's like, yep, I got one too. And Ben's like, why'd you get this other investigator to do the case when you hire me? He's like, look, it's like, I don't talk to you. I only talk to the boss. It's like, well, if you pay up more, maybe you can double the salary and figure out, what you want. So now, Winston, now we meet Silvermane. He's like, yeah, I went, we go to his mansion. He's like, I talked to him. He's like, he said he wants more to double this case. All right, we'll make sure, we'll figure out this, I want to know who burned my house, who did this to me. I want to know why they would set me up like this. So now we also meet Joe Robertson, who at the time he was working in his apartment. He said he was a photographer and news reporter for the Daily Bugle. And so now, we now meet okay, now Robbie and Ben and Jan are have been friends for many years. But then the private investigator was taken by Silvermane. He's like, oh, who hired you to, find me? He's like, nobody. And then whoosh, he kills the private investigator. Like, oh, snap. Now Silvermane's like, he means business, no one needs to find out. So now we find Felicia, now we get back to the case where, Ben finds his old photo from France, and everyone in that platoon was captured during the German War. So all that, now you feel, okay, now Felicia comes like, oh, Janet's like, are we going to be impressed that a man made of sand just attacked you and knocked you out like that? So Ben's like, why Flynn has gone missing, what's going on? So now we get more, clues that, oh, there's a rat, so Jimmy was hired to burn that house down, but you have no idea who it was and who was responsible for all that. But then you kind of realize that, someone in Silvermane's pack was the rat the whole time. So now, they come to Ben's office. These two henchmen, they threaten Janet like, oh, tell us where he is. Tell us where Ben is. Like, I swear I don't know. And so now, Ben goes to this couple's apartment. But it turns out the apartment that he was going to was his old apartment, because that was the 5 years he quit. And the couple's like, I don't think he was really a plumber. She's like, really? So now, they're selling these alcohol at the docks. And now Spider-Man just swings in, knocks out the guys, takes them out. And then he sits down. It's like, we need to talk. It's like, oh, where are my manners? Would you like a drink? I want you to stay away from Ben and his secretary. He's like, oh, the Flatfoot. Like, yeah, the Flatfoot. I'm owing him a fare. No one hires me. I'm warning you, don't come after Ben or his secretary ever again. So then, Robbie calls Ben. He's like, hey, were you the one? I heard that someone stopped Silvermane, and they sold him out. I'm in this gunfight. So now, someone sold out the alcohol that he was selling. Okay, now you figure out who's doing this. And now, we meet now Felicia is like, I got to get out of town. Flynn's gone missing. So now she ends up at the train station. And, and Ben goes to the hotel. He's like, look, Silvermane ordered me to, telling me to come see him. And he bumps into Winston. So Winston, he's like, okay, well, hey, I need some extra cash if you want me to do this case. So Winston pulls out his money. It's like, thank you. And, this Ben hires this little young kid. It's like, hey, where were you? She's heading to the station. And now they all meet up together. And, he's like, so now you notice that the money that Silvermane gave Ben at his office was marked. So all the marked bills are always marked. But then, so they go to the docks, you see this hole with a shovel, and, Silvermane pulls out like, oh, and Jimmy's spouse was also there at that same spot. And then, he's like, oh, she's like, so Spider-Man robs from, Silvermane's safe and gives Jimmy's wife the money. And, she's like, here, this is all the money. He's like, Winston, are you sure you got the right money? He's like, yeah, why? And then, like, all of a sudden, like, no. And he looked at Ben and Felicia, like, you set me up. And boom, he kills Winston, like, oh. And then, like, it's like, now you two get ready for the hole. And now you're like, boom. So the episode is like a cliffhanger. You're like, oh, who'd he shot? Then it turns out not a guy called, some person called G. G and Winston were the ones that he killed. And now you're like, oh, so either Felicia is the rat, but she, she had to keep herself quiet so that Silvermane wouldn't find out. And now, like, Silvermane's like, I can't trust these people. But then we meet Lonnie Lincoln, who was in this area of New York. And Robbie's like, oh, Jimmy was a friend of mine. And, Jimmy was a friend of mine. And, we were partners in the war. And Robbie's like, hey, man, I only want answers. If you want answers, go talk to his widow. But then Robbie, now he's on this private investigation case to know, Lincoln was just like one of those people in the wars. So now, the mayor is rampage. Silvermane's like, I'm in charge of this city. Make sure the mayor doesn't know anything. So Lonnie gets attacked by the cops, and boom, as he gets attacked, his skin starts to change. And Robbie's like taking pictures, and Sandman comes out. They're knocking the cops. So Robbie, he's like, I want good credit, But then, of course, the Daily Bugle pulls out, extra, read all about it, monsters. So Robbie's like, I didn't call you guys monsters. I never called you monsters, But he knew like these individuals had, these abilities. Like, oh, so now the Daily Bugle prints like monsters. And, now Flint and Lincoln are at large. But then we meet a new villain known as Megawatts. And he robbed the Diamond District. It's like, oh, you're the Spider. And he like zaps him. He kills him. And all of a sudden, like, he's getting drained. Like, so at first, like, he was able to absorb the electricity. But, Spider-Man takes out the electricity. But he's like, oh, I'm all juiced up and electrocuted. But then he's, like, getting wobbly. He's getting, like, loopy because he's losing his energy. So now he's like, oh, snap. Now he's like, and now everyone's cheering. But when Ben looks at Felicia's like, just tell me something. What do you mean? Falls out the window and he thwips her. And, of course, now he knows, now she knows, oh, he's the Spider. So he's like, well, come on, why don't you tell me your story? It's like, it happened like ages ago. It was during the war, during the Germans. And we're here to rescue these people. So Jimmy, Flint, and Lincoln, and Megawatts were all a part of that war. So now, as Ben goes to the rescue, he frees these people. But then we find out that the Germans were creating some type of super soldier with animals. spiders, snakes, scorpions, lizards. And Ben, he kind of rests like, oh, sir, are you okay? And this person who was already like mutated was a spider. He's like, ah, and he bites Ben in the arm. And then, then he tells Felicia, he's like, yeah. And then, I had these little irks and twits like this every time. And that's when he became, a hero. Then he learned to control it, but he still has them here and there when he has like, because he always had like these super senses, like these mind grains would hit him, because that was like his powers, like kind of like kicking in from that spider. But then you learn out that Robbie, then they find out that Dr. Farber, Dr. Farber, she helped these veterans with these powers. So you meet Megawatts, Tombstone, and Sandman, where now all of them have powers. And, this doctor's like to Rob, like, how dare you? And now you find out that this other assistant was her son known as Freckles. And he was there being experimented. So he's like, he's an old man, but he's like, yeah, I'm 39 years old. You saved my life in the war. And he has a drink with Ben. He's like, oh, you can't help us. So Felicia's like, excuse me, doctor, are you certain that you can save, all three of them? Like, yes, why? If I tell you the spider, will you not harm him? Yes. The spider's name is Ben Riley. And that's when Freckles kidnaps him. And now the doctor, she learns more about Ben, like, oh, whatever you are capable of, Lincoln was like, whatever's in the spider's blood is the way to cure us and will make us normal. By using our abilities, we're actually dying. And we can't control ourselves because we just can't control what's inside of our, the more we use our powers, the more we're going to get killed. So now so Ben is so whatever's in his blood is the key. So when the doctor was experimenting, she cured her son, it was able to reduce him back to being 39. He was young again. So Ben's like, I'll take care of him, Ma. And so today was Monday. And it's like, oh, Robbie print out the story that this doctor had a secret laboratory. She's been experimenting with veterans that gave them powers. And so now they blew up the place, but they also saw, when the doctor took the four of them down to the basement, all these people that were soldiers were like, they were experimented, they were mutated because the doctor thought she could cure them, but it only made it worse and blew up the entire facility. But luckily, Ben was able to get the antidote and take it out the building before it exploded. And now, Silvermane's like, we got to tell the mayor who's in charge. I'm the one that runs this city. No one else. Once the mayor gets elected out, another person's going to take his spot. So Silvermane was like, he was blackmailing everybody. He had that power that nobody had. So Ben is like, now Janet found out his secret identities. Oh, you knew and you didn't want to tell me? Well, we didn't want to tell you because we were surprised. So now, so Ben went to go see Sandman and Megawatts, took him to go see the Silvermane's like, hey, so Robbie had to pretend like, yes, I'm the spider and I'm going to bring over. So now when they go to the casino, he pulls the guns like, so Ben, if you're not the spider, I'm going to find out that you'll stop this bullet. And then, he's like, he's doing that, he's trying to get his powers back. And all of a sudden, Ben Riley reveals he's the Spider-Man because he now takes on Megawatts and Sandman. But Felicia goes after Silvermane in the elevator. It's like, oh, if it was someone to kill me, I want it to be you. And boom, she killed Silvermane. And then the final battle is between Sandman and Megawatts as they go at each other. And they were fighting. And Felicia, so Megawatts was like, oh, why should we take orders from this guy? We have powers. He's just using us as little puppets. And then he takes the antidote from Robbie, who dressed as Spider-Man. And he's like, oh, why do we need to take orders from you? We don't need to listen to you. We have the power. You don't. And now you think, you could control us. And they were fighting, and Spider-Man takes Megawatts, throws him up to the train, and boom, kills him. So Megawatt was like the more antagonist of the show than Silverman. He's like, because he's like, he had all this power. He was in control. He knew that he could do whatever he wanted. And he was burning up, Flint from all inside. And Spider-Man just took on Megawatts, threw him to the train, and killed him. And the last antidote was for Flynn. And of course, they had a funeral for him. And then Felicia's like, look, sorry, I thought I liked you, but I like him more. Flynn is my love. And, that's how, they walked away. And Robbie now owns his own newspaper company. Ben is back to normal. Everything is saving the city. Ben is finally coming out of retirement and now saves the city for New York and does what he wants to do is right. So that is my discussion for the entire show, guys. Hope you guys got to enjoy the show as I did. It was crazy. It was awesome. It was cool. 8 episodes, 1 series. Bravo to Amazon and well done. So, that does it, everyone. Happy Wednesday to you guys. Hope you guys have an awesome, incredible, safe day. I'll talk to you guys later. Be awesome. Be cool. Have the best day of your life because you're truly the most outstanding, wonderful people of all time. Thwip, 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 thwip. Bye, everyone.